Class 9, let's start a very new chapter, and the chapter name is the Delhi Sultanate. It's your chapter number 9, so let's start today's class. Let's start with the first topic, the spread of Islam in India and early conquest of the Arabs. The Islamic culture was introduced in India by the Arabs, who entered India as traders and later made their settlements on the western coast of India. So, this Islamic culture was introduced by Arabs in India who had entered India and started settling down on the western coast of India. So in Gujarat, they received liberal protections from the Hindu rulers, and the Zamorin of Calicut patronized the Arab traders. They praised the Arab traders. In the beginning of the 8th century AD, the Arabs under Muhammad bin Qasim conquered the Indian territories of Sindh and Multan. So, the Sindh and Multan, nowadays it's in Pakistan. So, in the beginning of the 8th century AD, the Arabs under the Muhammad bin Qasim conquered the Indian territories of Sindh and Multan. These victories were short lived because of the death of Muhammad bin Qasim in 716 AD. But the Arabs could have really intimate knowledge of Indian astronomy, numericals, and other branches of knowledge, which, according to Havel, they carried to Europe. Foundation of the Turkish rule in India, how they get consolidated in India. Mahmud of Ghazni made several invasions on India. He raided many cities including Mathura, Kannauj, Gwalior, Somnath, and carried away enormous wealth, rich treasures to his country. But Mahmud was not a ruler so far as India was concerned. So, in fact, the foundation of the Turkish ruler in India was led by Muhammad Ghori. Just underline. So, the foundation of Turkish rule in India was led by Muhammad Ghori. His first invasion was directed against Multan in 1175 AD. In 1192, he eventually defeated Prithvi Raj Chauhan, the ruler of the vast territories from Ajmer to Delhi. He then went back to Ghazni, leaving Qutb ud-Din Aibak in charge of his territories in India. However, in 1194, he again led an army to fight Jaychand, the ruler of Kannauj, and the neighboring regions also. He returned to Ghazni, and during his absence, Qutb-Din had to quell many revolts and disturbances in India. Means to end. So, during his absence, Qutb-Din had to end many revolts and disturbances in India. Right? So, Muhammad Ghori, who died in 1206, left no male heir to succeed him. Right? So, Qutb-Din Aibak led the foundation of the Delhi Sultanate under a new dynasty, popularly known as the Slave Dynasty. So, from 1206 to 1526, as many as 5 dynasties ruled over the Delhi Sultanate. So, this was the details of the how they got or how they get consolidated in India. So this was the foundation of the Turkish rule in India. Now next is sources to reconstruct the Delhi Sultanate. So there are various sources, literary as well as archaeological sources, which tell us about or which help us to reconstruct the period of the Delhi Sultanate. So let's talk about the literary sources, written sources. The literary sources. So the written sources are many, such as Tariq-e-Firoz Shahi, which was authored by Ziauddin Baroni. The second book is Prithvi Raj Raso, authored by Chand Bardai, and the writings of Minaj us Siraj. Now, many books were written those time, which became the literary sources which which became the sources to reconstruct the Delhi Sultanate. Barani's work starts with the accessions of Balban in 1266 and comes down to the 6th year of the reign of Firoz Tughlaq. Chand Bardai was a court poet of Prithviraj Chauhan, a great soldier and the ruler of Ajmer and Delhi. He defeated the Chandela king. We find the Prithviraj Raso, an interesting account of Prithviraj deeds of valor and of love. Ibn Battuta, a foreign traveler, reached Sindh in 1333 AD and spent many years at the court of Muhammad Tughlaq. So he has left an interesting account of India of his time. So these are the literary sources. Now come to the archaeological sources. So many monuments are there like Qutub Minar, and your many inscriptions are there. Pehua inscriptions and Sarban inscriptions. So these are the and many mosques, tombs, minars, palaces and other buildings are there, which gave a valuable information regarding the Delhi Sultanate. Now come to the monuments. The Sultans of Delhi built massive and magnificent structures. One of the magnificent architectural structures belonging to the period of Delhi Sultans is Qutub Minar. The construction of Qutub Minar, was started by Qutbuddin Aibak in 1199 AD. Just underline, the construction of Qutub Minar was started by Qutbuddin Aibak in 1199 AD when he was the viceroy of Muhammad Ghori. Later on, it was completed by Iltutmish in 1230. So this is point to be noted. Underline, later on it was completed by Iltutmish in 1230. Now let's talk about the features of Qutub Minar. It is situated in Delhi. It received its name from Qutbuddin, a Muslim saint of Ush and near Baghdad. Its main features are: number one, it is a circular tower which rises to the height of how much meters? 72.5 meters. It has 5 stories. So there are 5 stories tapering as they ascend and separated from each other by projecting balconies. The entrance to the tower is through the doorway on the northern side. Inside, there is a spiral stairway leading up to each balcony. Okay, this is a picture of Qutub Minar, which is situated at Delhi. Now see the structure of Qutub Minar. It is tapering towards the top, right? Tapering means it is like this. The tapering, it's tapering towards at the top, right? It is made up of red sandstone, marble and grey quartzite, very precious stones used to construct the tower, which is the highest stone tower in India. There are many writings carved in Qutub Minar. Floral motifs, flowers, images are also engraved on this Qutub Minar, on this tower, right? Now come to the next literary sources, that is inscriptions. The mosques, tombs, minars, palaces and the other buildings were engraved with the decorative lettering. These inscriptions, mostly in Persian, are a valuable sources to reconstruct political, social and religious history of the age of Delhi Sultans. The Hindu structures have inscriptions in Sanskrit as well as in Hindi. There are writings carved into Qutub Minar also, pieces of historical evidence. The inscriptions have sufficient advantages, right? Sufficient advantages. Now let's talk about the first inscription, that is the Pehua inscription of the Pratihara king. Mahendrapala suggests that Delhi was founded in 736 AD by the Tomars, a clan of Rajput. It mentioned that the Tomar ruled over the Haryana region with Dhilika, that is Delhi. So Delhi was called by Dhilika as their capital, right? So that was according to the Pehua inscription. Now let's talk about the Sarban inscriptions, which the found in the village Sarban, South Delhi, contains a brief account, a short account of the history of Delhi until the reign of Muhammad Tughlaq. Inscription in Sanskrit, Arabic, Persian, and a few other languages speak in linguistic synthesis. So linguistic means language, and the spirit of harmony and cooperation between the people of India. Some other inscriptions on temples, mosques, and other structures speak about endowments and gifts to religious and charitable institutions. So, in some of the inscriptions, we come to notice, or we come to know about the like other structures speak about the endowments and the gifts to religious and charitable institutions. We come to know about the gifts, endowments of that period, of that time, and we also come to know about the charitable institution of that age. Okay, let's come to the first dynasty under the Delhi Sultanate, that is the slave dynasty, 1206 to 1290. Qutb-ud-Din Aibak, as his master's lieutenant, had crushed a number of rebellions, number of opposition. Before his accessions to the throne, he was already in possession of many major parts of northern India. He ruled for how many years? 4 years only. That is from 1206 to 1210. And did not find time to establish a sound, means a strong system of administration, because he ruled for only 4 years. He, however, constructed 2 mosques, one at Delhi, that is known by Qutb-ul-Islam Mosque, and the other at Ajmer. He also started the construction of Qutub Minar, which was later completed by Iltutmish, son-in-law of Qutb-ud-Din Aibak, right? Okay, now let's talk about Iltutmish, 1211 to 1236. Qutb-ud-Din Aibak was succeeded by Ram Shah, 1210 to 1211, but the nobles conspired against him. So he was replaced by Iltutmish, who was regarded as a real consolidator of the Turkish conquest in India. So he made Delhi his capital and was the first Turkish ruler to introduce a purely Arabic coinage. Finding his sons incompetent to rule, Iltutmish chose his daughter Razia Sultan to his successor. Right? So this is a turning point in the history of India, that for the first time a woman, a lady, ruled became a ruler, right? So now the question is, why Iltutmish chose his daughter Razia as his successor, not his son? Because he found that his sons were incompetent to rule. They were not good enough to rule, right? That is why Iltutmish chose his daughter Razia Sultan to be his successor, right? Okay, now let's talk about Razia Sultan. A rule from 1236 to 1240, that is, Razia was brave and led her army in the battlefield, but the Turkish nobles were ganging up against her. She was defeated by Altunia, the governor of Sirhind. She later married Altunia, but the nobles plotted against them and they both were murdered in 1240. Right? Now, next is Nasiruddin Mahmud, 1246 to 1265. After about 6 years of internal strife, Nasruddin Mahmud ascended to the throne in 1246. The new king was pleasure loving and weak and left the administrations to Ghiyasuddin Balban, the leader of the 40, that is, leading Turks. Now come to the next, that is Balban, 1266 to 1287. After Mahmud's death in 1266, Balban occupied the throne. He adopted a policy of sternness and severity. He established order in the neighborhood of Delhi and instilled fear in the minds of the Turkish nobles by inflicting severe punishment on them even for slight offenses. So through this we come to know that Balban was a very cruel and a very strict ruler, right? So some of them were even, it's written, he was very cruel and very very strict ruler, we can say, because we know that for a minor offenses or a minor trespass, that person is given very harsh and a severe punishment, and sometimes some of them were even publicly beaten with a stick or with a leather belt, right? So and the next, it's written there, the northwestern frontier post were strongly garrisoned. So garrison means it's a group of soldiers who were placed so that to stop the Mongols invasion, right? So it's written there, the northwest frontier post were strongly garrisoned because of the Mongols ever hampering on India's frontiers. And later Balban was died in 1287 AD, right? Okay. So that's all for the day, children. We'll continue this chapter in the next video. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.